The new sensation thrilled him, and in its thrill he felt his heart beating a little faster, and hope rising in him. 5 years were a long time for him. That was the thought which kept repeating itself over and over in his brain, and with it came that other thought, that self-preservation was the first law of existence, and therefore could not be a sin. Thus did Father John turn traitor to his spoken words, though his calm and smiling face gave no betrayal of it when Nada and Roger returned to the cabin an hour later, their arms filled with red bakneesh vines and early wildflowers. Nada's cheeks were as pink as the bakneesh, and her eyes as blue as the rock violets she wore on her breast. And Father John knew that Jolly Roger was no longer oppressed by the fear of a menace which he was helpless to oppose, for there was something very confident in the look of his eyes and the manner in which they rested upon Nada. Peter alone saw the mysterious thing which happened in the early evening. He was with Nada in her room, and she was the old Nada again, hugging his shaggy head in her arms, and whispering to him in the old excited way. And strange memory of a bundle came back to Peter, for very quietly, as if unseen ears might be listening to her, Nada gathered many things in a pile on the table, and made another bundle. This bundle she thrust under her bed, just as a long time ago she had thrust a similar bundle under a banksian clump in the meadowland below Cragg's Ridge. Father John went to his bed very early, and he was thinking of Breault. The Hudson's Bay Company post was only 12 miles away, and Breault would surely go there before questing from cabin to cabin for his victim. So it happened that a little after midnight he rose without making a sound, and by the light of a candle wrote a note for Nada, saying he had business at the post that day, and without wakening them had made an early start. This note Nada read to McKay when they sat at breakfast. "Quite frequently he has gone like that," Nada explained. "He loves the forests at night, in the light of the moon." "But last night there was no moon," said Roger. "Yes." "And when Father John left the cabin the sky was clouded, and it was very dark." "You heard him go?" "Yes, and saw him. There was a worried look in his face when he wrote that note in the candle glow." "Roger, what do you mean?" McKay went behind her chair and tilted up her face, and kissed her shining hair and questioning eyes. "It means, precious little wife, that Father John is hurrying to the post to get news of Breault if he can. It means that deep in his heart he wants us to follow Yellow Bird's advice to the end. For he is sure that he knows what Yellow Bird meant by 'the country beyond.' It is the great big world outside the forests. A world so big that if need be we can put ourselves 10,000 miles away from the trails of the mounted police. That is the thought which is urging him to the post to look for Breault." Her arms crept up to his neck, and in a little voice trembling with eagerness she said, "Roger, my bundle is ready. I prepared it last night, and it is under the bed." He held her more closely. "Are you willing to go with me anywhere?" "Yes, anywhere." "To the end of the earth?" Her crumpled head nodded against his breast. "And leave Father John?" "Yes, for you. But I think sometime he will come to us." Her fingers touched his cheek. "And there must be forests, big, beautiful forests, in some other part of the world, Roger." "Or a desert, where they would never think of looking for us," he laughed happily. "I'd love the desert, Roger." "Or an uninhabited island?" Against him her head nodded again. "I'd love life anywhere, with you." "Then we'll go," he said, trying to speak very calmly in spite of the joy that was consuming him like a fire. And then he went on, steadying his voice until it was almost cold. "But it means giving up everything you've dreamed of, Nada. These forests you love, Father John, Yellow Bird, Sun Cloud." "I have only one dream," she interrupted him softly. "And 5 years will pass very quickly," he continued. "Possibly it will not be as bad as that, and afterward all this land we love will be free to us forever. Gladly will I remain and take my punishment if, in the end, it will make us happier, Nada." "I have only one dream," she repeated, caressing his cheek with her hand. "And that is you, Roger. Wherever you take me I shall be the happiest woman in the world." "Woman," he laughed, scarcely breathing the word aloud. "Yes, I am a woman now." "And yet forever and ever the little girl of Cragg's Ridge," he cried with sudden passion, crushing her close to him. "I'd lose my life sooner than I would lose her, Nada, the little girl with flying hair and strawberry stain on her nose, and who believes so faithfully in the Man in the Moon. Always I shall worship her as the little goddess who came down to me from somewhere in heaven." Yet all through that day, as they waited for Father John's return, he saw more and more of the wonder of woman that had come to crown the glory of Nada's wifehood, and his heart trembled with joy at the miracle of it. There was something vastly sweet in the change of her. She was no longer the utterly dependent little thing, possibly caring for him because he was big and strong and able to protect her. She was a woman, and loved him as a woman, and not because of fear or helplessness. And then came the thrilling mystery of another thing. He found himself, in turn, beginning to depend upon her, and in their planning, her calm decision and quiet reasoning strengthened him with new confidence and made his heart sing with gladness. With his eyes on the smooth and velvety coils of hair which she had twisted woman-like on her head, he said: "With your hair like that you are my Margaret of Anjou, and the other way, with it down, you are my little Nada of Cragg's Ridge. And I don't quite understand why God should be so good to me." And this day Peter was trying in his dumb way to analyze the change. The touch of Nada's hand thrilled him, as it did a long time ago, and still he sensed the difference. Her voice was even softer when she put her cheek down to his whiskered face and talked to him, but in it he missed that which he could not quite bring back clearly through the lapse of time, the childish comradeship of her. Yet he began to worship her anew, even more fiercely than he had loved the Nada of old. He was content now to lie with his nose touching her foot or dress, but when in the sunset of early evening she went into her room, and came out a little later with her curling hair clouding her shoulders and breast, and tied with a faded ribbon she had brought from Cragg's Ridge, he danced about her, yelping joyously, and she accepted the challenge in a wild race with him to the edge of the clearing. Panting and flushed, she ran back to Jolly Roger and rested in his arms. And it was McKay, with his face half hidden in her riotous hair, who saw a figure come suddenly out of the forest at the far end of the clearing. It was Father John. He saw him pause for an instant and then stagger toward them, swaying as if about to fall. The sudden stopping of his breath, the tightening of his arms, drew Nada's shining eyes to his face, and then she too saw the little old missioner as he swayed and staggered across the clearing. With a cry she was out of McKay's arms and running toward him. Father John was leaning heavily upon her when McKay came up. His face was tense and his breath came in choking gasps, but he tried to smile as he clutched a hand at his breast. "I have hurried," he said, making a great effort to speak calmly, "and I am winded." He drew in a deep breath and looked at Jolly Roger. "Roger, I have hurried to tell you. Breault is coming. He cannot be far behind me, Possibly half a mile or a mile. In the thickening dusk he took Nada's white face